Hi, it's Monday, September 1st, and we're tracking several systems in the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific today. On the Atlantic side of things, we've got a tropical wave that has just come off the west coast of Africa over this weekend, and the system is forecast to track west slowly through the tropical Atlantic this week, and it may develop along the way as it continues tracking west. We also get Invest 94E off the south coast of Mexico. It's an area of low pressure that's forming now just south of there, and the system is likely to form the next day or two as it tracks northwest and may threaten the Baja California, which is off your screen here, as we go throughout this week. We've also got Tropical Storm Kiko in the tropical East Pacific. This is in the middle of nowhere right now, in between Hawaii and Mexico. And we're going to start with this system as there's not as much in-depth details to talk about with this system, but there may be some reason to watch this in the Hawaiian Islands in a long range part of the forecast period. But if we focus on how the storm is doing now, we really have not seen up to this point the storm changing all too much with its thunderstorm activity in the center of the storm. If we look at a microwave pass we got last night, you can see that we had this classic curved band structure with thunderstorms wrapping around and trying to close off an eye wall structure here in the center of the storm. Now, up to about an hour ago from the time I'm recording this, this really did not make too much progress beyond that point. But now we are seeing more thunderstorms blow up on the south side of the center, and this is likely an attempt at pushing it towards hurricane intensity. And at this rate, I'd say this will likely become a hurricane sometime tonight or early tomorrow morning. Now, the environment overall is not too bad for this. Wind shear is not forecast to be all too bad for this, and it is in warm waters. It's riding a little close. It's somewhere in here. It's riding a little close to some of the cooler waters up north, which may pose a bit of a periodic issue of dry air, which may have been what caused the system to not make much progress since its microwave pass today. You can see in the water vapor imagery that we have a lot of dry air north of the system and all this darker gray further up north. And it's possible that over the next few days, this periodically gets wrapped in to the system's center. But apart from that, the system does have a pretty good environment to intensify. And some models do show that this has potential to intensify into a strong hurricane. The current forecast from the National Hurricane Center has this becoming a Category 2 hurricane with winds of about 100 miles per hour. They're going on the lower end of things for now, just given potential for disruption with that dry air. But I wouldn't be surprised if this does make a run at major hurricane intensity Cat 3 or 4 along the way as it does track west. This is the current forecast cone from the Hurricane Center. This is a zoomed out view showing you the full 5-day forecast and its relation to the Hawaiian Islands. And you can see what I mean by it may be a very long range thing. By day 5, which is next Saturday, it's still well east of you all. And even by day 7, this system would still be east of the Hawaiian Islands. But it may be something to monitor in the long range for the Hawaiian Islands, as the system will be beginning to gain latitude by this point, and it may get rather close to the island in long range, say early next week. This is a GFS ensemble showing you the mean 500 millibar or mid-layer steering flow for our storm as it comes west, and this is out to next Monday, so a week out by this point. And this is Kiko down here. And you can see the pattern that's keeping it on its westward trajectory right now. We've got a strong area of high pressure directly up north of it. But as we get further west, you see that we have this little kink in the streamline here just north of the Hawaiian Islands. And this is an upper trough that's getting cut off by a ridge that's building south of Alaska, and this is cutting off into an upper level low. And this does become important because as this low cuts off in this type of a configuration, this can set a more eastward end to the western edge of this ridge here. And so this might allow a scenario where Kiko is allowed to come north a little bit more. Now, it's not going to be a case where Kiko would, in all likelihood, follow the edge of this ridge and go north like this. The system will likely be weakening as the environmental conditions get worse in Central Pacific. But while it's strong still by this point, feeling more of the mid-level flow, it may allow it to gain a little bit more latitude, which might put it at a further north point as it tracks west, which may increase the risk to the Hawaiian Islands. Now, it's important to realize this is a 7+ day forecast, and if I scroll through here, you can see there's a lot of variability in exactly what this pattern is going to look like by the time we get to this part of the forecast period. And truthfully, models are very split on this, and you would expect that because we are talking about, again, a 7+ day forecast. We've had some models go north of the Hawaiian Islands and some stay well south of you all, a very big range. But this really illustrates is that it's something to watch. You know, it is peak of hurricane season. We always have to watch these things in the ocean, even in Hawaii. Now, the good news is the approach angle does not support anything strong. You can see that the waters here are not favorable for a strong hurricane to come as they usually are east of Hawaii. But it is still something to monitor because even a tropical storm can cause big issues for the island with the mountainous terrain that we have there. And of course, I'm going to have more videos on this as we go in time, getting closer to this time in range. And of course, the Hurricane Center will keep having advisories on this as long as the system is still a tropical cyclone. Okay, that's Tropical Storm Kiko. We're now going to go to Invest 94E off the south coast of Mexico. This system has been making a lot of progress seemingly today in convective organization. The two things really you need for a tropical cyclone is a well-defined circulation at the surface and organized convection associated with that. Now, we have not seen much evidence of the surface circulation being closed off. We've seen from a ASCAT pass couple of hours ago that this was still a trough axis, which I'll zoom in here if you can't see. I know the wind barb's a little bit small, but you can see these southeasterly winds on the east side of this axis turning more northerly here on the west side. So that is the classic look of a trough axis with no westerly winds visible on the south side. Now, this was before a lot of this organized convection that we're seeing in visible satellite imagery took shape. And it's hard to tell. I feel like I do see some rotation starting here, and this may just be more mid-level, but eventually that will translate to the surface. And this does look like a very healthy disturbance, which is on its way to becoming a tropical cyclone. And if we look at the water vapor imagery to get a sense of the environment that the system is going to have over the next few days, we can see that this environment is getting better with time. We do have an upper low sitting here in northern Mexico, but this is weakening and is going to slowly track east over the coming days. And so this is going to lighten any of the northerly shear that may be getting imparted upon this disturbance today. And so that's going to leave a low shear environment, and the waters are plenty warm in this part of the Pacific. So development is likely, and intensification beyond that point is also likely. This is the upper level flow plot from the GFS showing you the environment on top of the system as it comes northwest towards Baja California. You can see again, here's that little upper trough or upper low weakening and tracking east into the Gulf of Mexico. And then here behind it, we have an area of high pressure aloft that is now promoting low shear directly over the storm and also providing good divergence on both sides of the cyclone towards the equator and towards the North Pole. And so that feeds a intensification look for the system. And you can see the GFS does see this with this red number, the pressure beginning to lower as we approach the Baja California Peninsula. That's showing you the system intensifying. Now, there are a couple of caveats here. We need to see how the system does perform over the next couple of days before we fully say the GFS is on something here, because the GFS is one of the more aggressive models that we have. This is a case where this would be a quicker intensification rate as we approach the Baja California Peninsula. Two things that could be an issue for this system is initially it is very close in proximity to the coastline of Mexico, and it's possible that as it pulls winds off of the high terrain, as that happens, the wind moves down the slopes of the mountains, that air dries out. And that could be a source of dry air that might try to get entrained into the circulation once it's formed. The other part is that there are cold waters further west of Baja California. Now, on this particular track, it's in warm waters for most of its life. It really only cools off to a significant degree up to landfall around here. But there is colder water further west, and these upper troughs here, like you see here with this kink in the streamlines, do tend to deposit a lot of dry air on their backside. So if there is dry air in a close enough vicinity to 94E by this point, that could also be another point of intrusion. There's also the factor of you need to see how the system develops over the next couple of days. The internal structuring stuff like that, like forming an eye wall, that takes time. And if it is not as fast with that and takes more time, that could limit how much intensification we see. The European does see this. This is the European run from this afternoon. And you can see, compared to the GFS, it takes its sweet time developing into a tropical storm on this model. It really only forms here southwest of Cabo San Lucas. Now, I do think the European is being a little bit too weak here. After all, this system does look rather healthy this afternoon, though we do need to see how this is reflecting to the surface. Now, something as well I need to mention is that this does seem to be forming in a more compact style, and that does have a danger with it, as smaller systems can tend to intensify at a quicker pace. And with this kind of an environment that we're moving into, you can see we have this upper level high pressure system here, but there's also this upper trough. So there's a jet streak in between this ridge and this trough. That's a zone of accelerating flow with these darker colors here. And if the storm is positioned optimally and ready structure-wise, that can allow a phase of quicker intensification here. So there is a lot of variables still to work out with this system, but the most likely scenario from what I can tell is a tropical storm, likely going towards hurricane intensity. Seems likely here as we head northwest towards the Baja California Peninsula. Anything beyond that, that's highly dependent on the smaller details. How does the structure form initially? How does dry air potentially interact with that? And those will be answered in time. Now, for now, in the Baja California Peninsula, we don't have any tropical storm watches or warnings, as we don't have a storm formed and no advisories from that from the Hurricane Center. They do give this a 90% chance of developing, and they have mentioned that tropical storm watches or warnings may be necessary by tomorrow. And so what you need to be doing is reviewing your hurricane preparedness plan right now. That's the kind of phase we're in, as it does seem likely a tropical system will come through. And of course, the finer details of exact intensity and stuff like that will come later in time. And of course, when this does form, the Hurricane Center will initiate advisories, and they'll have forecasts on it as well. And I'll share those when those do come out, as well as I will have videos on the system as it tracks further northwest. Okay, that's the Pacific side of things done. Finally, we're moving back to the Atlantic. We've been in a bit of a quieter period after Hurricane Erin and Tropical Storm Fernand, but we're now seeing signs that as we're heading into the peak weeks of hurricane season, that things might start flaring up again. And it all starts near Africa, as storms usually do this time of year, with a tropical wave that's moved off the western coast of Africa this past weekend. This is a closer look at the eastern tropical Atlantic, and you can see again some rotation here with a tropical wave that has moved off. Now, this is not going to be a very quick development, I don't think, because we do have the intertropical convergence zone as a whole in this area, and you can see what this has if we look at the GFS low-level spin plot. You can see just a lot of strung out vorticity with the wave embedded within the intertropical convergence zone. And so that's likely to lead to a more gradual pace of development from this wave, though the system does look to have a fairly favorable environment, especially compared to original model expectations. The system has come off the coast of Africa a little bit more south than original model expectations were. Initially, models like the GFS had this coming north rather fast into this more stable air, as you can see denoted by the stratocumulus clouds, as we have a lot of colder water here. And alongside that, we have an upper trough here. It's hard to see on that map, but you can see this upper trough sitting here. And if the system did come north into that, it would get sheared apart, and we would not be talking about development of the system. But it has come further south now, and models have trended to keeping this south of this colder water and south of that upper trough, and now models have upticked a bit on development potential for this wave going forward. Now, the GFS is the most antsy with this. It has the system becoming a tropical storm by late this week and intensifying from there on out into a hurricane. Now, that may be a little bit aggressive. The GFS does tend to do that. we might be seeing both sides of the coin here with biases where the GFS is too strong and the European may be a little bit too weak. It keeps it a tropical wave for a rather long time. This is out to day 5 and day 6, and it's just now forming into an area of low pressure. We may see something in between happen, but notice how slow the system is moving. I mentioned at the beginning, this is going to be a slow movement system through the tropical Atlantic, and this is going to be important to note because I know there's going to be a lot of questions of, is this potentially a risk downstream for the Caribbean islands or further west? And the simple answer for that is we don't know. It is something to watch, certainly. You always watch tropical waves this time of year, but given how slow the system is moving, just for some perspective here, this is day 7 on the GFS, and keep in mind we're here right now. So we have not moved all too far, and we're only just now by this point in the model halfway between Africa and the Caribbean islands. And there's a lot of uncertainty naturally at this range that can easily change the long-term forecast for the system. You might be able to pick out one already. The GFS is fairly far north with the system by day 7, and if we go to the European by day 6, this 6Z run only goes out to day 6, but you can see it's well further south of the GFS, and that partially has to do with how strong the system is and what kind of development we see over the next 7 days, as a stronger system will be more inclined to go north. And the best way I can illustrate this is looking at this, which is a cross section. So it's sort of like you're taking the hurricane and you're cutting it in half like a cake. And this is that cross-section view of that storm. And so when a storm like on the GFS gets stronger, the thunderstorms within that tower higher into the atmosphere. So you can see these colors here highlighting the winds that can be attributed to the thunderstorms is rising further up into the atmosphere. Now, if we compare this to a sounding which shows different winds at different heights, you'll see that this is peaking out at 400 to 500 millibars, mid-levels of the atmosphere. And if we look at the sounding from the GFS, you can see right at that range, we have a push of southerly flow trying to force the storm north by this point. But if you look below that layer, it's all out of the east. And this is the reason why intensity is going to be so important. If the storm is stronger like the GFS does show, if it forms earlier and is able to intensify into a hurricane like it shows, it would in all likelihood track further north, and in that case, that would likely be a scenario where we really wouldn't have to watch the system all too much further west, as systems statistically that are out here tend not to be too big of an issue further west. But if it does stay weaker, like the European shows, and is not as strong, so the thunderstorms are not towering as high into the atmosphere, it's going to feel more of just this plain easterly flow on pushing it towards the west. And so that may lead to a scenario where this is further south, and we may have to watch it later down the road for the Caribbean islands and areas further west. But of course, this is just one piece of the puzzle. There's also the factor of steering features, which I'm not going to show you because those in of itself are also very uncertain at this range, more uncertain than usual, I would argue, just given the way the pattern is with the jet stream as a whole in the Pacific and the Atlantic right now. So really, the thing to do is just keep an eye on it like you usually would for any system this time of year in the tropical Atlantic. If it is going to impact anybody, it's going to be a long time from now. The most imminent impacts are going to be the Cabo Verde Islands, but we're not expecting the system to form that quick. So that's just going to be showers and thunderstorms, maybe some gusty winds, and that's about it. But anywhere further west, and anyone online is telling you that it's going to be a big hurricane risk later this month, they're lying to you. Nobody knows what's going to happen with the system long range. And the best part is we have so much time to watch this because this is only by day 7. We're halfway to the Caribbean. That means we have all of this week and all of next week, really, to watch the system before it becomes any kind of a threat to any land area beyond the Cabo Verde Islands. Now, right now, the Hurricane Center gives us a 50-50 shot of forming into a tropical system over the next 7 days. I'm inclined to agree with that. The environment seems generally favorable, and we will have to see exactly how development goes over the next 7 days, as that will be crucial for determining where the system goes inevitably. But like I said, that's long range, and we'll talk about those details in finer detail later down the road. For now, nothing really to worry about imminently, and across the rest of the Atlantic, all things are quiet. We're starting September off a little quiet, but don't let that fool you. We are in peak season. So at some point, we are going to heat up again, and it's just important not to let your guard down. Even though we really have lucked out this hurricane season so far with Hurricane Aaron staying east of the US and making minimal land impacts. It is peak of season, so we got to watch all these systems as they come through. All right, that's all I've got for these three systems. I'll have more videos on these systems as necessary over the next few days. Probably going to be focusing a lot on 94E over the coming days. But that's all that I've got for today. Thanks for watching.